Hello guys and gals, welcome back to another episode of Creepypastas. Yes, this one isn't necessarily game related, but it made Creepypasta of the month on Some Ordinary Gamers Wiki. So without talking too much, the Creepypasta is called Funnymouth, and I'm going to be doing it word for word, and we'll also be seeing video footage of the actual chat happening in progress. Yes, I actually did get video footage of the chat going on. Wink, wink. Yes, I did. Anyways, without talking too much, let's begin Funnymouth. The first thing I should probably note is that I'm Lemon Lime Skull. In other words, that's my screen name up there. That was the first time I saw or heard from Funnymouth, and for all intents and purposes, it should have been the last. Anyone who spent enough time chatting away knows that weirdos come and go. Folks pop in to ask insane questions or just to troll a populated channel. What first struck me as odd, however, about the Funnymouth guy was the fact that he came and went with no particular goal. He didn't try to piss anyone off, he didn't ask anyone in the channel how to fix his computer or remove a virus or anything. No, he just stuck his head in, rattled off some random text, and happily fucked off. I don't know what results I expected from following this guy to another channel. I'm not the type that goes out of his way to annoy or argue with people. I'll usually avoid it at all costs. Though when someone starts with me, I don't mind getting into it at that point. I guess what I'm saying is I have no idea why I pursued this. He was sitting there in the channel by himself. I actually chuckled out loud at this point. He was weird and inoffensive. And with that, I left. The act got old fast, and I felt either this was someone trying too hard, or a legitimate moron who was unaware of how to properly use a chat program. Sitting idly by yourself and popping into other channels for a split second seemed like a desperate bid for attention. I might have done that, and laughed my ass off in or around the 90s. But yeah, stupid. Silence dominated the channel for about a half hour as I minimized the window and went about my business. Nothing. 8 users in the channel. Not a single one active. It took me a few seconds to see it, Funnymouth again, staring again. I physically slumped my shoulders with a not this shit again sigh. Then I noticed he wasn't in the channel. Obviously, it was a glitch. With either my client or the server, the message was kicked up from earlier in the night at random. These things happen, still it creeped the hell out of me. After a few minutes of sitting there with a really cold, creepy feeling in my stomach that I shouldn't have done something feeling, I decided to stop trying to brave it out and just closed out the entire program. Sure, I could have just hung out like everything was fine, but why bother trying to prove I wasn't spooked? Hell, nobody was even around to see me slink away. After a few more hours screwing around on the webs, I went to bed at around 2:40 in the morning. One thing I always prided myself on is that I do not have nightmares, at least not regularly. Usually if there are monsters or ghouls or nuclear wars in my dreams, I get to control it and I have a great time. I'm shooting zombies in the face, outright telling ghosts they're not real while I laugh at them, and if there's some disaster, I always know how to get to the safe spot while every motherfucker fries. I've had maybe 4 actual nightmares in the past 10 years, and yes, I'm completely serious. The first nightmare of my adult life was in 2005. I'd just broken off a relationship with someone who had been with someone else for over a year behind my back. That's right. That night, when I finally did get to sleep, I dreamed she was strapped down to a medical table while some sort of unseen, inexplicable creature sucked her brain out through an organic machine. The brain screamed ceaselessly. The second nightmare had me visiting a medical facility where they were experimenting with new methods of saving lives. It was a fantastic tour of this high-tech facility, lots of wonders of modern science, people in lab coats, etc. Then I was led to a room with 3 car crash victims who had been saved by their techniques. This included a slowly rocking young girl whose face had been completely distended and hung around her chest, and a woman who was nothing but a cluster of twitching severed limbs, all held together by a drawn-out kite-like span of flesh. The third soon came after the second. I was accustomed by 2 people. One who wanted to insult me to no end, and the other who kept trying to pinch and tweak me in absurdly ineffective ways. Thinking I could control this dream like the others, I sent the 2 men against each other, thinking it would be a sort of poetic justice. Instead, the pincher became increasingly violent until he pulled at the other's cheeks, grabbing his tongue with a fist and fiercely pulling it out until it came out. Then he pulled the fellow's eyelids until they distended in some sort of grotesque prolapse. I suppose what I'm getting at is that even when I did have nightmares, I was never the actual target of any sort of horror. It's always been a kind of empathetic horror related to someone else getting brutalized. That night, however, was different. As soon as I fell asleep, I started dreaming. Basically, it was a recurring dream I have where I'm in the woods, just checking out animals and birds and generally acting chill. I lie in the grass and look up at the sky. It's always a dream I welcome because even if I've had a shit day, I'll wake up happy and ready to start over. This time the script changed. I laid in the grass, but while I was staring at the sky, something felt odd. It was a cold, squirming feeling on my neck. In the dream, I reached to my neck and pulled away a long, withering earthworm. Earthworms disgust me. If I see one in the yard, I'll specifically get a shovel and heap dirt over it, simply so I don't actually see it again. Disgusted, but more or less content, I flung the worm aside and continued my dream. Then, that feeling again, clammy, wet, wiggling against the side of my neck. I pulled another worm away. Again it happened. The third time, the feeling of confusion and dread became so overwhelming that I immediately snapped myself out of the dream. That's what usually happens when shit gets real in my dreams. Game over. I figured it out though, at least I thought I had. In the waking world, I felt my neck and discovered a slick, slimy film on my skin. Logic dictated that I must have been drooling in my sleep. Nothing to be proud of, but not exactly terrifying either. My dreaming mind must have translated the icky feeling to an appropriate creature in the forest dream. Perhaps more unsettling, though, was the fact that the bed around me seemed to have indentations. 4 to be exact. It was almost as if someone on hands and knees had been hovering over me as I slept. There were any number of reasons that could have happened, but from then on that night, I slept very lightly. Any little thing, like the sound of a ceiling fan, could wake me up straight away. I had no real interest in going back to the woods that night. When morning came around, I got ready to take off, to get out of the house and shake the cobwebs out. I only planned to check my email real quick, to make sure I didn't have any pending transactions or questions I had to answer. Surprise! Now, what follows next is a group of emails. I'll basically just tell you who's sending it to who and what the email says, and then after that comes the ending of this creepypasta. So, let's begin. From Funnymouth to Charles Watts. Charles Watts is the character we're talking about. He's Lemon Lime Skull, if you will. I had a good time to talk to you. It can be fun again. You'll see what. I don't like. Stop it. As you probably recall, I hadn't given this asshat my email address. However, a logical answer someone else in the channel must have. He obviously came back to #refer sales, asked someone who I was, and that douchebag completely betrayed me, knowing I don't give out my personal contact info. Although the email was dated 2/40, that was pretty much the moment I went to bed, when everyone on the channel was still idle. Even though I well and truly knew I was taking some sort of bait, I responded. From Charles Watts to funnymouth@blood.com. Yeah bro, not exactly sure I want you emailing me. I was clear and to the point. There was no mistaking the message I was sending, and though it was snippy, I wasn't goading him into replying by starting a flame war. But of course, from funnymouth@blood.com to Charles Watts. Come on, don't be so sad about it. I know you can like it. We will have fun a lot of the time. It's okay even. And with that, I blocked his address. Really, I shouldn't have done that in the first place, but I still had some sick sort of interest in exactly where this was going. Maybe if I put my foot down, he would admit he was just screwing around and call me a humorless wet blanket. When I saw it was just the same old bullshit, that gave me the green light to go ahead and shut the guy out. For what it's worth, you can relax at this point. The blocking stuck. There was no follow-up message circumventing the ban. After a few minutes, I assured myself that was all over, and I went about my day. It wasn't until I got home at dusk that the cold, squirming feeling in my stomach started all over again. I had no idea why. Well, that's not entirely true. I had some idea. I checked my email. Nothing from Funnymouth, but there was an email from George. George is Ghost George, as you saw in the IRC footage. I'll actually detail the emails below too. So let's go. From Ghost George, Georgie, to Charles Watts. Hey, refersales.com is fucked up. I can't get shit to load. When you're online, please take a look. ASAP. Peace and carrots, George. I let out a string of curses. Downtime meant lost sales, and I'd been out all day and no way for George to contact me. If I'd been a little less strict with my personal info, he could have just called me. I loaded the site and waited for some sort of error screen. Instead, it began to reroute to another page. Blood.com. From Charles Watts to George G. Yeah, I see it. It's redirecting to a website with a giant pixelated face with a messed up tongue. I think this has to be that Funnymouth piece of shit. Did you give him my email with the domain in it? CW. From George G to Charles Watts. It's a 404 page, not a redirect. I want what you're smoking. All I get on blood.com is a coming soon notice. I didn't give anyone shit. George. From Charles Watts to George G. Har har har. Funny. Then George emailed me a screenshot of the site giving a 404 error, along with a coming soon notice for blood.com. You could have easily faked them, but why? I mean, if this is some joke, it's pretty abstract and I didn't get it. When I looked at my website files, everything was normal, nothing was out of place, and nobody had even logged in to change shit. I checked the domain names for domain names name servers, the thing that routes a domain where it's supposed to go, and nothing was out of sorts. Still, there was this bloated, tongue-wagging face looking back at me with its empty eye sockets. Then, I don't know how I missed it in the first place. Looking closely, the picture of that face wasn't really pixelated. It was made of tiny letters, HTML code coloring each letter specific to the image. Over and over again, the word that made up the image was right in front of me. Funnymouth, 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 Funnymouth. In a great cluster of nonsense. I felt like spitting at the screen. I unblocked his email address and set about writing an incredibly profane and threatening letter. I didn't really care if I got the site back at this point. I just wanted to get everything off my chest so I could feel like I was in control of the situation again. Before I could finish the letter, I just got this weird, creepy feeling again that no, it couldn't be feeling. Where you know you're being absurd, but at the same time, you know you're right. I finally hacking out my death threats, checked the inbox. From what follows here is a bunch of messages from Funnymouth at blood.com to Charles Watts. I'll just summarize it. I'll just tell you a couple bit. I see your handsome face. Come on. Hello, hello, hello. I don't think about it, please, though. Anyways, those were the messages. So let's get back to the creepypasta. Not only was that feeling correct, the feeling that he had already emailed me the minute I unblocked him, but it seemed he'd steadily been emailing me nonstop since I blocked him. 10 more letters arrived just within the time span it took me to reply. From Charles Watts to funnymouth@blood.com. Fucking stop. I was getting a stress headache. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but rage. This is probably the most absurdly infuriating person on the internet, and that's saying a lot. Thankfully, the string of letters did indeed stop. I tried to calm myself down, breathing deeply, but it didn't seem to take. I was still incredibly pissed. Slowly, methodically, I sent him another note. From Charles Watts to funnymouth@blood.com. Hi, I don't understand what you were saying, and I don't understand what you want. I think there may be a language barrier. Is your first language English? I think you have done something to my website, and I would like you to undo it. If you're mad at me, I did not intend this to happen. You may have misunderstood what I said, or what I meant. Please change my website back, and let's both go our separate ways. Thank you, CW. I waited. I thought about how I'd conquered my anger, and that this measured response was really the best way to go about it. This fellow would understand what I meant. He'd realize the mistake he made. I calmed down. Everything was going to be okay. Then, from funnymouth@blood.com to Charles Watts. Staring face. I hit the roof. I hit the goddamn roof and went clear through it. I smacked my monitor with my palm, knocking it clear off the desk. That pissed me off even more. As I drove my fist into the keyboard repeatedly until the keys flew free, I screamed out in a mixture of frustration with myself and rage over the situation and stormed out of the room, knocking down anything and everything I could get my hands on. For as long as I could manage the energy, I'd laid waste to my own shit. I would have started a fire and burned the fucking place down if I had a lighter on hand. That night, I stared at the ceiling for what felt like an eternity before sleep came. Waiting for sleep, I knew I was going to have nightmares. I just knew it. That was how my luck was going. Imagine how surprised I was, even in sleep, when instead of some horrific setting, I was someplace safe. The woods. I laid in the grass again. I felt the relaxation. I knew even my subconscious knew that everything would be okay. No matter what setbacks life threw at me, the world would go on. Nothing was permanent. Everything was in transition. Nothing could really get to me. I felt a squirming against my neck again. Nope, no dice. Nothing could spoil this right now. I ignored the worm. It would go away. I felt the squirming moving to my mouth, and now I couldn't will myself awake. Every other time, I'd been able to decide to wake up, but it seemed like that opportunity had now passed. That it wasn't a worm. It was a finger, then another, then more until 4 slimy, squirmy digits were locked around my teeth, clutching my lower jaw. It didn't hurt when it happened. It was just sort of like a pop, more pressure than pain. It was quick, and before I even knew what was going on, it was over. I then managed to force myself awake. I sat up and got to my feet in complete darkness. Feeling my way around the walls, I decided to make my way to the bathroom. There, I finally flicked a light switch. I stood before a mirror, rubbing my eyes as the harsh light blinded me. I stared into the mirror for minutes on end, with no reaction, no feelings, no thoughts. Then I smiled. I smiled as best I could. Now with my jaw being completely broken, hanging loose around my neck, my tongue lolled out listlessly, like a paralyzed, gooey slug. My teeth weren't rooted in anything but threads of flesh, and I could pull them out by hand, with about the same discomfort as a needle prick. I laughed. The halting sound came out like a gurgle of a backed up sewer drain. What a handsome face. What a funny mouth. A funny mouth. A funny mouth. Funny mouth. Funny mouth. Wow. First off, I believe this is the longest Creepypasta episode I think I've done. But better yet, I understand why this made Creepypasta of the Month. It's a Creepypasta that, honestly, I think could be somewhat real, and is one that made me somewhat nauseous as I read it. You may have caught on as I read the parts detailing the worm getting into the main character's head, or just the worm or the gore sections in general. As far as cliches go, I really didn't find any, and even then, they wouldn't be ruining the experience. Now, what is good about this creepypasta? Well, again, like I stated, it just feels like it could be real. It's realistic. Even the website detailed in at blood.com is real, but then again, the sane individual should know it's fake, but it's a really nice touch. And if I wasn't so skeptical about everything, I might just let the mind control worm slide, maybe thinking they might be some undiscovered species or something, but ultimately it is fake. But the beauty lies in it being realistic with no overuse or misuse of gore, or weird and incredibly unexplainable phenomena like a creepy ghost doll appearing on the main character's desk. Yes, I know mind control worms don't exactly fit the bill as being realistic, but it's a hell of a lot better than a plushie who cuts you up and sells your organs on eBay. I mean, think of how many people you meet on IRC chat rooms on the internet that resemble a person like Funnymouth, to an extent. Could it really be a troll or someone like Charles taken over by this infection? But really, that's what I found really good about this creepypasta, is that it seems so eerily realistic and kind of digs at you next time you see that off person on a chat room. I don't really find anything too bad about this anything bad in general about this creepypasta. And to be honest, if I had to bring anything up, it would really feel like nitpicking. I mean, I guess if you say something about the mind control worms and cracking the jaws open, I'd let it slide, since it made me feel nauseous and creeped out, and looking back at them again, it's really just the skeptic in me constantly questioning this. In the end, I thought it was a pretty great and refreshing creepypasta, and I enjoyed it. It was pretty lengthy, but it was awesome, and I highly recommend you all should go check it out. Links in the description. This has been another episode of Creepypastas, and if you like what you saw, then like, comment, and subscribe. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.